Hi, this is Clay Staires with the Leadership Initiative. This is Winning in the Workplace. We're on session number 9 of our leadership level as we are continuing to expand the way that we think, expand the way that we lead in our organization. Our whole purpose in this series of Winning in the Workplace is to learn how to think and learn the mindsets that go on at different levels of leadership throughout any organization or company, community organization or team or anything like that. You guys, in these last 2 sessions, we just have session number 9 and session number 10. And in these last 2 sessions, what I want to talk about is primarily 2 primary things that can get in the way of you and your leadership ability, you leading your company or your team to the goal of what you're wanting to accomplish. Today, we're going to talk about the 5 enemies of company culture, of a good company culture. And then finally, in our last session, and this very interesting, our last session, I want to talk about the 9 steps to rebellion. Dum, dum, dum. It's a huge word there, rebellion. Another word you could throw in there is mutiny, if you wanted to, okay? And again, it's fun because you can take these 9 steps that we're going to be talking about, and you can watch Star Wars, okay? Go all the way back to the second and third episode with Anakin and how Anakin turns into Darth Vader, and you'll see these 9 steps being played out. These 9 steps were something that I am very familiar with, all right, because I've done them twice, all right? Walked all the way through each 9 steps of these steps to mutiny. I've done them, very familiar with them. And each of the steps have a particular language, they have characteristics, they have easy ways for you as a leader to be able to recognize that one of your team members is on the path to mutiny. All right, so that's what we'll be talking about in session 10. As we dive into today, I want to talk about the 5 enemies of a strong company culture. You guys, this is something, again, as leaders, here's our role here, okay? We're here to, number 1, we're here to cast a vision. We need to know where we're going. Remember, the 2 roles of a leader is to have vision. Step number 2 is to be able to protect the culture. The way that we protect our culture is to encourage, all right? Always encourage. We want to be inspirers, we want to be inviters, and we want to be igniters. So as we're into these last 2 sessions here, I want to talk today about how you need to be aware of these 5 enemies, these 5 things that can easily creep into your company to begin to erode, to begin to attack, to begin to work on the mindsets of your employees and your partners, to cause your culture to actually begin to deteriorate. So here's how we begin to protect. So let's go ahead and dive into this, okay? First of all, number 1, and I'm a huge fan of this, okay? I'm a huge fan of the whole communication thing. I've always been a big communicator. You know, if I'm guilty of something, I could very easily be guilty of over-communicating. But the very first enemy that comes into play when it comes into deteriorating your culture is, number 1 here, poor communication. Now, poor communication can come in multiple different forms, okay? One way that it could show up is that there's a lack of communication. Another way that it could come up is there actually is communication, but what we're trying to communicate is the wrong thing. Another thing is that it's not just the wrong thing we're communicating, but we can actually be intentionally communicating the negative thing. So this idea here with poor communication, remember, so often the thing that I hear a lot is the big trap with communication with so many people is thinking that it's actually taking place when it's not. I think I've told you before about when I first took over my family's company. I was all excited and I had vision and I had direction of where we were going to go. We were going to change the direction of this company. Remember, we were in a real tight spot when I first took over my family's company. Things were not going well. We were in the red, and it was either I'm going to lead this company on into and take us through bankruptcy, or I was going to lead us out of it and we're going to turn this thing around. Well, I got together in the first 24 hours of me being on the job. I called all of our employees. I think there were about 50 employees at the time. And man, I got them together and I was talking and I was going, man, I was excited. I had excitement and I had energy and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't realize that what I was doing in that first 30-minute meeting that I had with all of our employees was I was completely offending everyone. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know my background. They didn't know what I was capable of. And I came in and tried to turn the ship too quickly. And so what I dealt with for that entire season was almost every single one of those employees being offended and angry at me, to the point where even my key leaders would not do what I was asking them to do. It was a very difficult time, but I learned how to not communicate, all right, if that makes sense. Again, so many of these lessons on leadership that I'm sharing with you guys are things that I've come through the fire on. They're things that I've learned, don't do it this way, I've done it that way, and it doesn't work really well. So here we are with poor communication. Communication obviously is the lifeblood of every single organization. It's the grease that keeps the gears moving. If we are not communicating well, this is obvious, but if we're not communicating well, then all of a sudden things begin to slow down. We can very easily find ourselves going in circles because communication isn't going well. We have to go back over things. We build something and then we realize we have to take it apart because we didn't communicate well on how exactly we wanted it done. Unfortunately, most leaders don't communicate really well. We have a vision, we have an excitement, and then we begin to tell people, do this, do this, do this, do this. And unfortunately, when people actually begin to go do those things, they don't do them quite the way we wanted them to do because we didn't communicate how we wanted it done. We just said, go do it. And then we get mad at the people because they didn't do it the way we wanted it to do it, but we didn't tell them how to do it in the first place. All right? So remember, we've got our 4 rules when we talk about good communication. We have to say it. It's got to come out of your mouth. You can't just expect people to read your brain. You've got to actually say it. Number 2, we have to write it. All right, very important. You've got to say it and write it. If you just tell people what to do, they will nod their head and then they will walk away and forget what you said. So you have to make sure that you write it down so they can hear it, but then they will also be able to read it. But I'm sure you've been in this spot before where you have said it and you've written it down and you ask people, do you understand? And they nod their head and they get it. And then they go out and do it. They're not producing the outcome that you wanted them to produce. It doesn't look like what you wanted it to look, because we need to make sure that we also show it. This is how we get on the same page. If you've ever used that phrase before, just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. The way to do that is you have to say it, you have to write it, and you have to show pictures of it. This is what it will look like. When everything is done, it should look like this. And then finally, number 4, and this could be one of the most difficult things to do as a leader, is to consistently model it. Consistently model the way you want things to be done. And unfortunately, what happens a lot of times as leaders, especially leaders of small companies, we get so busy, we get so overwhelmed, so stressed out, and so emotional during our days that we actually begin to model an inappropriate way to handle our emotions, an inappropriate way to manage our time, an inappropriate way to manage people, an inappropriate way to manage our money. So this is just something we want to be very aware of. So I want to give you just a few practical steps on communication, okay? Because again, if we have poor communication in our company, on our team, in our organization, in our department, I promise you it will begin to erode and break down the unity. It'll begin to break down your team. It'll begin to break down your company culture. So first of all, what we want to do here, we'll call it A, is we want to shed some light. Shed some light. When was the last time when you as a leader actually got your team together and cast the vision? Let people know what the heck was going on. Actually let people into some of the bigger picture of what's going on in the company, some of the dreams, some of the goals, whether it be in the company or whether it be you personally. But to shed some light, begin to let people know, because people want to know what the heck is going on. If you don't tell them what's going on, catch this, if you don't tell them what's going on, they'll come up with their own ideas of what's going on. Happens all the time. Whether it's right or not, they'll come up with their own ideas, and then they'll start talking to other people. And then they'll say, well, this is what's happening. Can you believe they're doing that? I can't believe they're doing that. Well, you know, they only think this and they only do that. And now they have this whole, they've put you in a box because you're not communicating with them. So we want to be sure to let them in. People want to participate in something that matters, okay? Whether it's work, whether it's their volunteer experience, whatever it is, they want to be involved in something that matters. So you as a leader, when you are communicating, the importance of you consistently letting people in on where we are on the map. Where is it that we're going? How are things going? How are we doing along the way? Just want to encourage you with this. Next of all, another thing that we can do is define the goal. You guys have heard me talk a lot about this, especially when we were in the management level session, talking here, as far as defining the goal. Be sure that your group, the group that you are leading, understands the expectations that you have for them. Have you ever been in that spot before? Where all of a sudden you're getting evaluated on, and people are saying you're not doing a really good job, but there never really was clear expectations to begin with? And I've been in that spot before where I've got somebody that's been my leader, somebody that's evaluating me on specific things that I'm going, okay, I didn't know that that was part of my role. We have never had this conversation, and now you're upset with me. Now you're evaluating me poorly when we never did communicate what the heck it was that I was supposed to be doing. The goal was never clearly identified, and now I'm being evaluated because I'm not hitting the goal. Oh man, that can easily break down the unity. It can break down the trust within your team. So we want to be careful to consistently define the goal. Put them in writing. All right, what do you know? Put them in writing and agree on predetermined goals. Everybody get on the same page. That's so important. Me and my employees, I try to have every month at least, I try to grab at least 30 minutes with each one of my employees just to make sure we are staying on the path. Their specific goals, make sure they are hitting their specific marks.